and happy Advent. Welcome to Historic Trinity. This is the beginning of our Christmas organ recital. If you want to be here, wonderful. If you don't, then I won't be insulted if you slip out at this point. The first piece is a set of variations on Good King Wenceslas. This was premiered last Christmas Day at the Washington National Cathedral, which was incredibly exciting for me. It starts with a fanfare, which was specifically written for the National Cathedral for two different trumpet stops in different parts of the building. And after all, what kind of king would go forth on the Feast of Stephen without a trumpet fanfare? So that's how it starts. The second variation is a dialogue between the page and King Wenceslas. The low sounds of the organ are Wenceslas, and he's saying, "Hither, page, and stand by me, if thou knowest telling yonder peasant who is he, where and what his dwelling." And then the page answers in his little soft soprano voice, "Sire, he lives a good league hence, underneath the mountain." So that's variation 2. Variation 3, Wenceslas is all excited about this. He wants to help this peasant. And so he calls out, "Bring me flesh and bring me wine. Bring me flesh and bring me wine." And I always have images of Henry VIII pounding on the table with his turkey drumstick or something like that, if you know that famous image. So Wenceslas is in the pedals, bum, 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 bum. And then all the high stuff, that's the servants scurrying around. Variation 4, the poor page boy is now freezing. "Sire, the night is darker now, and the wind blows stronger. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer." He's just dying of hypothermia. So that's the sad little variation, the quiet variation. You're going to find the melody like in the alto line if you're a choir singing. So you have to listen carefully for the melody with that one. The fifth variation is a big French toccata. The melody comes in loud in the pedal, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. That's Wenceslas. And then a measure later, it comes in the left hand. It's like in a canon, like row, row, row your boat, dum, dum, da, da, dum, bum, bum, up an octave. And it reflects the words, talking about the page following his master. "In his master's footsteps trod, where the snow lay dinted, heat was in the very sod." So the heat generated by Wenceslas saves the life of the poor page boy. Happy ending, a Christmas miracle. you. Our next piece is very quiet. The tune that we know as What Child Is This was actually a popular Elizabethan song. Secular words, alas, my love, you do me wrong. It was later co-opted by the Christian church as a carol that we know and love. We know that this was popular already by 1597 because Shakespeare refers to Greensleeves in The Merry Wives of Windsor. The drunken rogue Sir John Falstaff shouts, "Let the sky rain potatoes, let it thunder to the tune of Greensleeves." English composer Ralph Vaughan Williams wrote a fantasia on Greensleeves for orchestra, early 20th century, and what we're hearing today is a transcription of Vaughan Williams' fantasia for organ. Next, we have music by Alexandre Guilmant. Guilmant was a French composer and concert organist, very famous in his day. He actually did world tours, which included Detroit. He played a recital downtown Detroit, early 20th century at Jefferson Avenue Presbyterian. Now, it was their previous building. It's not the current building or the current organ. But nonetheless, there is a Detroit connection with Alexander Gilman. What we're hearing today is a set of variations. He calls it Noel polonais, which means Noel is just a generic word for the French word for Christmas carol, and polonais meaning Polish, variations on a Polish carol. We know this carol today as Infant Holy, Infant Lowly, Infant Holy, Infant Lowly. So you're going to recognize the tune. Our next two pieces are by Johann Sebastian Bach. We hardly need to say anything about Bach at all. The first piece is a transcription of an orchestral interlude from the Christmas oratorio. So it was originally for chamber orchestra, but we hear it here just on the organ. And the second piece is a quiet little setting of In Dulce Jubilo, which we know as Good Christian Friends Rejoice, or Now Sing We Now Rejoice. That second piece, it has a BWV number. That means that at one time it was certified as being genuine Bach. However, today scholars are discussing that maybe it wasn't. There is no copy of this that survives in Bach's handwriting. There is nothing that he actually edited. So some people are saying that this isn't really Bach. It may have been a student or somebody else who wrote it. But in any case, it's really quite charming. The next piece, the Grand Corps, Sortie pour Noel. Grand Corps is just a generic French way of saying the big sounds on the organ, basically. Sortie is a postlude, it means exit, and Noel, once again, that's a generic name for a Christmas carol. So this is a postlude based on Christmas carols. There are two of them that you'll hear kind of alternating. They're old French carols. We don't necessarily know these tunes today, but they're quite lovely. This piece was published in 1910. César Franck, the great French Romantic organ composer, died in 1890, so this was not published until 20 years after his death. My impression is that it might not have been finished. Ordinarily, the great Franck works, he writes out in great detail, use these stops, these tempo changes, everything is spelled out. This piece is kind of a mystery. It kind of leaves a lot of up to the imagination of the performer. So I've taken it quite freely. I'm doing all kinds of tempo changes and stop changes which are not specified in the score, and I'm doing that on the basis that I don't think that this was a finished piece. It is a good piece nonetheless, and I hope you enjoy it. Next, we have the lovely Evening Prayer by Engelbert Humperdinck. Did you know that the American pop singer Engelbert Humperdinck took his stage name from a German opera composer? Not very many people know that. The story behind the opera version of Hansel and Gretel, I think, is very charming. Humperdinck had a sister who had children, and so his nieces and nephews, and she asked him to write some songs for them based on the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, which the children loved. And he wrote, and it started out just being a fun thing in the house with his nieces and nephews. And eventually it became a full opera. He just kept writing away. And it's his best known work. It still is very much in the repertoire today. The most famous part of it is the evening prayer. Hansel and Gretel are lost in the woods, and they sing a prayer before they go to sleep. When at night I go to sleep, 14 angels watch do keep. So we've got an insert to the program. It's a piece called Riu Riu Chiu. It is part of my set of organ settings of early carols. Good King Wenceslas that we heard before is also part of that set. Riu Riu Chiu was a Spanish Renaissance carol. It's performed quite a bit, actually. You may have heard it. You may recognize it. Riu Riu Chiu is apparently just nonsense words. It's sort of like fa la la to us today. It's very syncopated, it's very lively. It would not have been sung in church in Renaissance Spain. It would have been sung at home or even out in the marketplace, possibly with instruments and percussion banging away. And it certainly is having a good time. And I have tried to incorporate some jazz elements into the piece as well. Next we have the Parade of the Wooden Soldiers. Most of you will probably know this piece. Leon Jessel, as he was known in his native Germany, was a composer of light opera in Berlin before World War II. He was the German equivalent of Jerome Kern or maybe Rodgers and Hammerstein in this country. But his ancestry was Jewish, unfortunately. His family had converted to Christianity in the late 1800s, and his wife was a long-standing Nazi party member. He thought he was safe, but he wasn't. He was arrested, and he disappeared in a hospital for Jews in 1942. Very sad. His music, however, lives on after the war. His operettas were performed again. In fact, they're still in the repertoire in Germany today. Parade of the Wooden Soldiers is just a fun little standalone piece. It's not from any larger work. It's just for fun. I am not a theater organist, but I'm going to do my best to try to play it in that style. To end, we return to the music of Alexander Guilmant. His March Religieuse is based on a theme by Handel. It's the lift up your heads from Messiah, lift up your heads, O ye gates. But he just uses the first four notes, bum, bum, ba-dum. It's also joy to the world. And he managed to spin an entire piece out of those four notes. The piece is in three parts. It starts out with a quiet march. Then there's a fugue, very busy, which ends with an enormous build-up to full organ. And then he brings back the march theme at the end, but this time with bells and whistles and sirens, all the resources of the organ. So much. I appreciate you coming. I know it's such a busy time of year, so it's very nice of everybody to turn out for this. Thank you. There is another tour starting in this room at 1:30, which is just a few minutes. So if you want to stay for the tour, Pastor Andrzejewski's tours are absolutely wonderful. So if you haven't heard it already, you may want to stay. If not, this would be the time to slip out. Thank you so much.
You sounded great. Well,